Welcome to Birns Sawyer. I'm Steve Tobenkin, Chief Operating Officer and General Manager. We're here in beautiful downtown Hollywood, the Cinerama Dome ArcLight Cinema Center, and we're about to embark on the Digital Cinema Course Rental Guide. Welcome to Birns Sawyer. We're one of the oldest camera and equipment rental companies in Hollywood. We're located here at the ArcLight Cinema Center right next to the Cinerama Dome at Sunset and Vine. The company's been in existence since 1954, and we were the first company to bring in Airflex cameras into the United States. And we have a long history of helping emerging filmmakers and student filmmakers and major film studios as well, and helping them get the right kind of gear and for their shoot. My name is Steve Tobenkin. I'm the general manager. Most of my career I spent as a commercial producer and director. I've also produced and directed feature films and television. And what I'd like to do today is give you a little insight into how to work with a equipment rental company. I've worked with dozens of them all over the world, and they're pretty much all the same in general terms. Some of the deal terms are different and some of their terms and conditions are different, but in general, the way we work at Birns Sawyer is very similar to the others. So there are some tricks, though, how you can get the best kind of a deal, how you can work with a professional relationship with these people, and how you can get the most for your shoot. The purpose for a rental company is to support filmmakers. We're a supportive function to the people that actually make movies and make television, and we understand that. And part of what we need is your help in forming a relationship. One of the important things that you can do is form a relationship with one or two equipment rental companies, because in the long run they'll really save your butt, because you'll be out shooting somewhere, you'll need help, you'll have a number, you'll have an email, you'll have a cell phone, and you'll be able to get equipment you need when you need it. One of the big questions that comes up these days is why should I bother to rent? I mean, cameras are so inexpensive, some of the HDV cameras and mini DV cameras. And I think it's a good point, and lots of our clients actually come in and they'll ask me to talk to them about renting versus buying. And I think there's a compelling case for both of them. The compelling case to rent, I think, is that number one, you know that all of the gear that we rent, any of the reputable houses rent, has been checked out. It's checked when it comes in, it's checked when it goes out, and you know that it's been set back to factory zero and things are working properly. And that's not always true when you borrow equipment from a buddy or you have your own equipment. Sometimes people get a little sloppy and don't check their own equipment. And so I think that renting from a reputable place is a viable thing. The other reason to rent versus buy is that every job typically is different. Unless you're working on a documentary that's taking a long time, or you're doing a certain kind of contract that you have for someone that is the same every week, each job is different and each job requires a different tool. And all the gear that we rent or that you could buy is in essence a tool. It's a means to an end. It's a means to get a product out, which is basically your film or your video. And part of what renting allows you to do is get the right tool for the right job. So what we'll do is we'll consult with you, if you will, and figure out what the right tool is. Some of the networks require 1080, some of the networks require 720, sometimes you need a film out, and each project is a little different, and so picking the right tool for the right job is a critical thing, and it would be very expensive to buy the right tool every time. It's much more efficient to rent it, and you're not tempted then to take a tool that isn't right for a job and try to use it and in essence give a subpar product, which you probably don't want, and we obviously don't want either. Clearly there's a compelling case with these small cameras for purchasing. We do sell cameras and we sell a lot of them, but it makes sense when you've got a long project, or you've got a contract to do something, or you just don't have the energy to come down to a Birns Sawyer every weekend and shoot, or perhaps you're in a smaller market and there aren't a lot of rental companies in the smaller market, so that you have to own your own gear, and that's very typical of smaller markets where there'll be only one rental company and people typically buy and own their own equipment and take care of it. So it's the first question I think you need to decide is, do you want to buy or rent? And a company like Birns Sawyer can help you do that. And obviously there's a lot of blogs and other sorts of things you can do some initial research on, as well as obviously the DVDs that you may have watched up till now. So part of what we do here is we try to form a relationship with our customers, and I urge you to do that with us and with any rental house that you have. What we'll do is we'll perhaps sell you a camera and then we'll rent you accessories or a second camera if you have a bigger shoot. And so having that kind of an ongoing relationship is really key, I think. You do get better service, let's face it, when we know who you are. It's much easier the second or third time you rent from a company or you do business with someone than the first time, because a lot of the paperwork and other things are out of the way, and we know how you work, you know how we work, and so things get easier when you have a relationship, and I urge you to do that. Part of that relationship is going to be talked about in this DVD, and a lot of it has to do with you and you understanding your project, knowing what it is that you're shooting, knowing who your crew is, and come in to us with some sort of a basic plan, and that way we can react to that and give you some input. So let me give you some of the keys to how to get the most out of working with a rental house, and it really starts with you, honestly. It starts with you understanding what it is you're shooting and what your needs are. And if you come into us with a plan, if you have storyboards, if you have a list, you being organized is really the key first ingredient, because then we can react to what it is you're doing and we can make recommendations. There's generally someone here that's shot everything that's been shot. I mean, we've shot every kind of situation known to man, and you can rely on, often if you get a good rental house, to give you some advice that will save you some money, save you some time, and save you some grief on the set. So start with an understanding of what your shoot is. Second thing I would do is try to lock in your keys early. Have your DP, have your gaffer, and because those guys generally help put the list together, what kind of gear you need. So if you ask for just a camera, well, there's 40 cameras. I mean, the issue is which camera, what kind of lens. Is it a cine-style lens? Is it an ENG lens? If it's a film camera, is it 35, is it 16, is it Super 16? What aspect ratio do you need? I mean, there's just a million little details, and if you lock your keys in early and discuss what the job is with them, they can actually put together a list generally for you that you can fax or email to us, and then we'll have something to react to. I mean, often, just as a point of interest, those lists request everything on the planet, and what will happen is there's often a sticker shock when you get a list from a DP and you send it into us, and all of a sudden it's $4,000 instead of $2,000, which is your budget. And so I think that you should just be aware of that. It's a tendency for craftspeople, and I understand it. As a director, I want all the tools available to me around so I can just grab them at a moment's notice. But it's a tendency to order more than you need. And so it's part of the process, the iterative process between you, if you're a producer or a director, your DP, and the rental house as to what is the right mix of equipment and exactly, what do you need to have at what budget. Another key is it often helps to tell us what the budget is ahead of time, because we can work backwards and we can say, here's a piece of gear that isn't so expensive, that will do the same job that your DP wants, and we can make a budget happen. And I would give us a fair budget, a reasonable budget. Hopefully you've been able to budget your job, and particularly if a client is funding it, generally there's more money involved than when you're self-funding a job. But give us a budget or budget range and say, here's where I'm trying to hit. And that goes a long way to saving us time, but also allowing us to creatively give you some input on what kind of gear you want. Another thing to know about your production is you don't absolutely have to have the latest and greatest gear. I mean, everybody likes to have the newest gear. I love to have it. DPs love to have it, but it's not necessary. I mean, Lawrence of Arabia was shot with cameras that are vastly inferior to what we have today, and it looks great. And so many movies were shot with cameras that are just not as technologically advanced as we have, and it's not necessary, and it costs a boatload of dough to shoot with the latest and greatest gear. So work with your rental company and tell them what you're trying to accomplish and what your budget is, and they'll guide you to number one, what will do the job, and number two, what you can afford. And sometimes they'll give you the latest and greatest if it's just on the shelf and it's not going out, and you might get it if you have a relationship with them. You might get better gear than you actually are paying for, but you don't need it, and it's you should avoid the temptation to always try to get the newest gear. Another thing that's key in terms of the beginnings of having a relationship with a rental house is there's always paperwork involved. I mean, the rental house is renting you or giving you, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gear, so they need to know who you are. They need to know you have insurance. They probably need a deposit from you if they don't know who you are. And all that paperwork takes time, and typically they have a paperwork packet which we'll go through, and which says, here's who I am, here's where I live, here's my account status if I have a business. I have got accounts at other places that will vouch for me. Get all that in early, and that will really smooth things out for that rental process. Another thing that's worth noting is know your schedule. I mean, everybody knows that schedules change, everything in Hollywood changes, but knowing that you need to pick something up on a particular day and that you're going to travel with it, and then you're going to shoot with it, and then there's travel back. Knowing all those things is a key ingredient to us being able to give you a fair price and a good price. And we also need to know the equipment is available. Sometimes some pieces of equipment we don't have enough for all the demand. And so getting in early, getting your paperwork in early, getting your order in early is something worth doing. With all that said about what you need to do in terms of being organized and having your keys, knowing your schedule, I think I'd like to encourage you not to be afraid to ask what you need. A good rental house knows that they are here to serve you. We're in service to get the best product out at the end of the day, and so that the more organized you are and the more you know what you want, really the happier we are, because then we can just go about solving your problems or just delivering what you know if you know it. So be organized and be professional, and you will find, and ask for what you want, and you will find that a good rental house will reciprocate, and you'll have just a really professional, good relationship, and there'll be time to have fun in addition to just worrying about the gear and the insurance and all that other details. One of the really key things about forming a relationship with a rental house is that you'll start to form a relationship and some camaraderie and some respect back and forth, and what that will translate to you is into favors that the rental house can do for you that may not cost them a lot of money, but really helps you out. They might give you a free travel day. They might upgrade you to a different kind of camera that's available but not being rented on that particular day. Obviously, they may give you a little more of a discount, and you might even find that you have some fun with them, as opposed to worrying about all the details of the shoot and the insurance and all that other stuff. A lot of really great people work in rental houses. A lot of people who have shot on big jobs work at rental houses, and their advice and their help can be immeasurable. I mean, we'll bend over backwards for existing customers. I come in on Sunday. Sometimes I'll FedEx stuff out to Turkey or Indonesia to give someone gear that they need, and that's the kind of relationship that a good rental house and a good production company will have. And it's really worth investing some time and energy into that. When you think about a shoot, you've got, say I have a crew of 10 to 12 people, or say I have a crew of 40 people, and you've got thousands of dollars an hour riding on the equipment, on the actors, on the location. And if a piece of equipment goes down, or if you need help right away, and if you have a relationship with a rental company, they'll get it to you. If you have a relationship with a rental company, they may have given you an extra piece of equipment for nothing, just in case something goes down. So it's the kind of thing like that really translates to thousands of dollars worth of savings sometimes, and can save a shoot from being ruined, really. So go in, find out who the rental agents are, find out who runs the company, introduce yourself, and let them know that you're in the business and you're here to stay. You're excited about the business and you're a real person, and that you want to be their customer and you want them to be your supplier. And that kind of a direct, straightforward attitude, I think, goes a long way. It's a little tiring, candidly, when every single person comes in and says, I need a deal on this job. I need a deal on this job. Well, we're happy to give people deals, and we do give deals, but it's easier to give a deal when you have a relationship with someone, because it feels more reciprocal and it feels better. So, go ahead and invest that energy, and you'll find it comes back manyfold. The vast majority of what I've told you works for any kind of a rental company. It works for a camera rental company, a lighting company, a special effects company. They all generally work the same. But there are differences in companies and there are differences in markets. And typically in large markets, LA, New York, Chicago, London, Paris, places like that, companies are specialized. There'll be a special camera company and there'll be a separate lighting company and a separate special effects company. There are some companies, Birns Sawyer is one, and there are others, that will do a full packaging service for you. So it's a full service concept where we can package all the support gear, plus a camera, film or video, plus lighting, grip trucks, and sound equipment. And generally when you do that with a company, it simplifies your life because it's one insurance certificate, it's one account, it's one check, and obviously we're willing to give you a more aggressive rate when we have the entire job as opposed to just part of the job. So sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you'll hire a director of photography or a camera assistant and they'll bring gear to the set because they own it, and part of their deal is that they're going to rent you that gear as opposed to renting it from a company. And that's understandable, and that happens in the business all the time. Same thing with gaffers often have their own trucks. But whenever possible, if you're in a market that has a company that is a full service company, it's often much easier, and you can get economies of scale. You can have one truck work for both cameras and lights as opposed to getting two trucks. You can have one set of drivers. So there's a reason to try to economize in that where you can. Particularly on indie films, where that's a key ingredient. You don't have a key department head with a huge staff under him in every camera, lighting, sound department. If you can get it at a one-stop shop as opposed to a specialty a la carte company, it's often much better for you. Okay, so you've got your shoot. You know what you need to do. You need to call a rental company and negotiate for a camera. So the first thing you'll do is you'll ring up your local company and you'll say, I need to rent a camera, and they'll generally put you in touch with either a rental agent or an account executive or someone like that whose responsibility it is to take down your needs and your dates and come back to you with an actual quote for how much the camera gear will cost. And what they'll generally ask you is about the job, about who you are, and they'll say, do you have an account with us? And if you do have an account, of course, then you'll just proceed right to the job and talking about the specifics. And if you don't have an account, at least by the end of the conversation, they will get you some sort of paperwork to establish an account. Nobody will rent to you unless you've actually established an account. What an account means is basically you've signed a piece of paper that says, here's who I am, and I agree to be responsible for the gear that I'm taking out. And typically that's some sort of an application that you can either download from the web of the company whose website you're renting from, or the rental agent can give it to you if you're in-house. So in the Birns Sawyer case, our application starts with a front cover page, which basically describes each one of the terms pretty much in layman's speak and in simple terms that we need. The first is, it says that you actually have to sign this paperwork in order for us to rent you gear. That's obvious. The second talks about our payment terms. And our payment terms are generally COD. That means you pay for the rental at the time you take the gear out, unless you've established credit with us prior. We will give credit on terms like net terms, net 10, net 15, net 30 to larger companies, to the networks obviously, and to studios, sometimes to individuals. It kind of depends. You have to be credit worthy and have other credit references. So this describes how you would go about getting credit from us or whether you have to pay up front. After that, it talks about insurance, and for expensive equipment over $10,000, we require that the company has insurance. All rental companies will require that you have insurance. We have a special arrangement where if it's under $10,000, we'll allow you to put a hold on one of your credit cards. So if you have a credit card that has a $10,000 available line of credit, we'll do just what the car rental companies do. We'll basically hold up to the value of the equipment. If it's $7,000, we'll hold $7,000, and you'll authorize us to sign that and to put that through in case there's damage or you lose equipment or something happens to it. So that's the way we get around for small production companies and small productions, how we get around not having to have you get a full insurance policy, which is a good thing to have, but also very expensive. So, and we'll talk about that. So basically the insurance deposit, and the next term is basically an absolutely critical term. And basically what it says is you are responsible for the job and you are responsible for the equipment. And so we highly encourage you, in fact, it's a requirement for any complicated piece of equipment that you come in and you actually prep the gear, and you prep it here, and you set it all up. It's a service we do the day ahead of time. We don't charge for that, it's part of our service. You set the gear up and you be sure, number one, everything works. Number two, you have everything you need for your shoot, because we don't really know what you're shooting, and when you're setting it up, often you find, oh my God, I've got to do that wirelessly now, and you may have to add something. So in essence, this is your check that you have everything you need, and it's our check that everything is working properly, so that in essence, when it leaves here, we're all agreed that the gear is in good working condition and you have what you need. Things change, we know that, you know that, things break down, everybody knows that, but at least we have a baseline from which to say, you know, this is working. It also means that it's your responsibility in terms of loss and damage or in terms of breakage. So if something goes out, you sign on the bottom of the contract, yes, I have 6 filters, yes, I have a camera body, yes, I have a lens. We expect when it comes back, there to be 6 filters, a camera body, and a lens. And it erases that issue of, well, I didn't look in the box, or I wasn't sure it was there. We've all signed off on it. You've signed off on it. Somebody from Birns Sawyer has signed off on it. So it's just a real good check and balance, both for the quality of your production and to be sure that we know that the gear is really there. So that's the responsibility part. With a lot of these new cameras, people are renting hard drives from us or P2 cards for Panasonic, and it's basically digital media, and that's a new thing obviously in the business. So we're just reminding you in essence that when that digital media comes back, we're going to erase it and get it ready for the next client. So please, you know, archive your work. And it didn't used to be an issue because you would obviously take the tapes out or take the film to the lab. But with the digital media, sometimes people forget to do that, and obviously we don't erase it immediately, but we're going to erase it at some point, and you need to have that material available obviously for your edit. So that talks about digital media. Generally the way it works with return times is you'll prep the day ahead of time. If your shoot's on a Wednesday, you'll prep on Tuesday afternoon. You'll take the gear out at say 6 o'clock, and that's when your rental starts. You'll have it for the entire Wednesday, and we request that you bring it back by Thursday if it's a one-day shoot at 10 o'clock. So out at 6 the day before the shoot, back at 10 o'clock the morning after the shoot. What that does is it allows us to turn it around and check it all in, clean it, prepare it, set everything back to factory zero for the next guy who's going to come in and start his prep on the next day, say, you know, around 2 o'clock, and to be out at 6. Because often gear is on a turnaround where something you have needs to be brought in and turned around and serviced for the next client. So we're requesting 10 o'clock, and we request strongly that if you're going to be late, sometimes it's okay to be late if there's no turnaround, but you alert us and let us know. Otherwise, you will often get a call from us at 10:30 saying, hey, where's the stuff? And we need it, and please bring it in. So that's the next part of that. And the final is cancellations, and we request that you give us notice if you're going to cancel, because obviously the way that a rental company makes money is it rents its equipment. And if I've held something for you and then you cancel and it doesn't go out, it means I wasn't able to make the money renting it for someone who needed it. So it really hurts us. It hurts us in terms of often we've pulled it, we've gotten it all ready for you, we spent time and energy on it, and then if you don't show up to pick it up, you know, we generally feel required to charge you something for that labor. So these are the basic terms. There's a much more specific terms and conditions on the contract, but we've put this in English, you know, in basic English, just so that everybody knows what it is, and we ask you to sign that. So that's the basic procedure. Most rental companies that are camera rental companies do something very similar to this, and the 6 o'clock checkout before and the 10 o'clock the next morning, that's very common. One thing that we do and some other companies do is we have a weekend rate where Friday to Monday is considered one day, and that's part of the negotiating process. It's sort of built in. We've already negotiated that for you. So for us, since we're not open on Sunday to return things, we just say it's a one-day weekend, and so we have obviously a huge number of people that take advantage of that, because they'll come in, they'll shoot on a Friday night all the way through till Sunday morning or Sunday evening and return on Monday, and it's only a one-day charge. So it's something that you should be aware of and you know, take advantage of if you can. The second form of our application is what I would describe as a traditional rental application. It talks about who you are. You put your name and address. It talks about what kinds of accounts you may have or references. If you're a company and you've rented from other people, put that down, and that way we can call them and say, hey, how was that experience with this person? And that way we can, feel comfortable who you are, and also perhaps even grant you credit terms. And I think this is important to do. And even if you're starting off, it's important to start to build credit in the industry. That's both financial credit and respect credit. When I first got in the business, I was 22 years old. A friend and I opened up a company, and we really had no experience running a company. We had no credit. We had no money. We had nothing really. And but I realized that since I was doing advertising, TV commercials, advertising agencies are notorious for paying late and for stringing you out. So what I realized is I would have to go and get credit from some of the vendors in order just to survive and be able to do the jobs. And what I did, and what I encourage you to do, is find someone. I went to Leo Chalukian, who ran a large company called Ryder Sound. It was a sound mixing place. And he happened also to be the president of the Credit Association for the industry. And I sat him down, I said, here's who I am, here's where I grew up, here's what I'm doing, here's why I need credit. I promise I'll be a good guy. And in essence, the first job I did at his place, he made me pay up front, and then after that he gave me a little credit, and after that he gave me a little credit, and by the third job I had enough of a track record that I was able to open accounts at Panavision and editing studios and sound mixing places all over town. And in essence, that whole part of my company was I was now using other people's money and to float my jobs. And of course, I was diligent about paying my bills right away. So I encourage you really to go and try to get credit. It's what legitimate companies do. And if you're going to be in the business and have a company, do more than one job. It's a comforting thing to a rental company to know we're dealing with someone who's stable and who's going to be around and has been around. So see what you can do about that. That's what this is. This tells us who your trade references are, or who your personal references are, if in fact you don't have any trade references. The third part is, if you're going to ask for credit from us or from another company, you'll have to tell us your bank account information, who your bank officer is, or if you can take advantage of the credit card deposit, you'll have to tell us your credit card number and expiration date. And typically on the COD account, we'll ask you to put a deposit for the amount of the value of the equipment, and then it'll ask you to pay for the rental as you're leaving the building with the gear. So that's what this information is for, your credit card. And down below it says, here's the terms and conditions under which we're allowed to charge your card. So obviously read that. That's an important paragraph. And that covers both the rental and also the